The impacts of trauma can be so subtle and so insidious and so informative, so influential, that the nervous system begins to align itself and become so familiar with it, it almost becomes a baseline. And what's a baseline if not a predictability or an anticipatory part of our mind that wants to recreate or recapitulate whatever it's already known, even if it's painful, even if it's disruptive. So that means that there is a part of our psyche that has, almost like wet clay with a fingerprint, has made a groove. And this is very consistent with what we covered in the first module with karma. There's a very high correlation between karma and trauma. That we will unconsciously replicate the conditions of the traumatic experiences that we have already experienced, even though they were painful. What does that look like in your own life? That could be, these are in no particular order, that could be that you gravitate towards a partner who is abusive in the way that you felt abused. You could gravitate and stay with a partner longer because they're neglecting, because that sense of neglect and invisibility actually feels like love or feels familiar to you at the very least. And if it's not in a love romantic partnership, it could be the hostile job that you experience, or the high stress job that you experience, or the experience of being at work where no one really sees you. That in itself becomes a replication, because when asked if you should leave, you say absolutely not, that would be impossible. You both feel unloved there or unsafe there, but you can't let it go. Big clue that it's root cause trauma. Big clue. The conscious part of you goes, this is unacceptable, and then some other thing from the invisible shadows is going, I can't leave it. I can't let go. I can't let go is really key. I can't let go is really key. You can't let go because you're terrified of the consequences. And why are you terrified of the consequences? All you have to do is look back into childhood and look back what the messaging and the signaling was. If you challenged authority, or if you split from authority, or you fell out of line, that's the fate that awaits you if you step out of line now. You won't. And I remember my father telling me only at the times where I challenged him, he would subtly say to me, actually it's not so subtle, you will lose the best friend you've ever had. And what did that mean for me? It meant like no more allowance, no more safety, no more, all as a child, you're completely dependent. So what he's saying is he's pulling the trump card saying, you're out, you're done. Give me what I need. That's called bullying. So maybe you feel bullied now in your work environment or by your current relationship, and this would be why. Another way that there's a reenactment is sometimes the victim becomes the abuser. And in that way, there's this kind of traumatic legacy where there's a victim, abuser becomes the victim becomes abuser, and it goes down the line like that. So you may have like 4 or 5 or 6-year-old boys who get traumatized, sexually molested, grow up thinking that that kind of experience is normal because it has been it occurred in a state of rampant denial. They have all kinds of weird insecurities and feelings that don't get processed. They think that they themselves are to blame and they're shamed about it. That shame is so painful that it becomes the jumping off point for a lot of aggression. If that aggression has nowhere to go, boom, abuser. That's called reenactment. And then what happens when, from the point of view of the tip of the iceberg, we see the abuser? What do we do as a society? We condemn them to hell. And what's the corollary in your own family circles, or even the social circles, when somebody has a misstep or a mishap? What do? Especially now in our culture where everybody's up in arms and ready to pounce, you step out of line and you're condemned to hell. What's no one asking? What's the one question from a trauma-informed lens that we should be asking when someone does something really weird or inappropriate? What should we be asking? We say, naturally, what do we say to people when they step out of line? We say, what's wrong with you? How the hell could you do it? What's the more appropriate trauma-informed question we should be asking people if we really have any decency? What happened to you?
True.